Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 3, Chapter 20, Text 2. Kshattamaha Bhagavataha Krishnasyaikantikaha suhrit Yastatyagrajam Krishne Sapatyam Aghavaniti Kshatta Mahabhagavataha Krishnasyaikantikaha suhrit Yastatyagrajam Krishne Sapatyam Aghavaniti Kshatta Mahabhagavataha Krishnasyaikantikaha suhrit Yastatyagrajam Krishne Sapatyam Aghavaniti Kshatta Mahabhagavataha Krishnasyaikantikaha suhrit Yastatyagrajam Krishne Tapatam Aghavaniti Kshatta Mahabhagavataha Krishnasyaikantikaha suhrit Yastatyagrajam Krishne Apatam Agataniti. Mataji's. Kshatta Vidura Mahabhagavata, a great devotee of the Lord. Krishnasya, of Lord Krishna. Ekantikaha, unalloyed devotee. Suhrit, intimate friend. Yaha, he who. Tatyaja, abandoned. Agrajam, his older brother King Dhritarashtra. Krishna, toward Krishna. Sa apatyam, along with his 100 sons. Aghavan, offender. Iti, thus. Translation. Shonaka Rishi inquired about Vidura, who was a great devotee and friend of Lord Krishna, and who gave up the company of his elder brother because the latter, along with his sons, played tricks against the desires of the Lord. Purport. The incident referred to here is that Vidura left the protection of his elder brother Dhritarashtra when traveling everywhere to sacred places and met Maitreya at Haridwar. Shonaka Rishi here inquires about the topics of the conversation between Maitreya Rishi and Vidura. Vidura's qualification was that he was not only a friend of the Lord, but also a great devotee. When Krishna tried to stop the war and mitigate the misunderstanding between the cousin brothers, they refused to accept his counsel. Therefore, Kshatta, or Vidura, was unsatisfied with them, and he left the palace. As a devotee, Vidura showed by example that anywhere that Krishna is not honored is a place unfit for human habitation. A devotee may be tolerant regarding his own interests, but he should not be tolerant when there is misbehavior toward the Lord or the Lord's devotee. Here the word Agavan is very significant, for it indicates that the Kauravas, Dhritarashtra's sons, lost the war because of being sinful in disobeying the instructions of Krishna. And again, the translation. Shonaka Rishi inquired about Vidura, who was a great devotee and friend of Lord Krishna, and who gave up the company of his elder brother because the latter, along with his sons, played tricks against the desires of the Lord. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Goratvashe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, Hare Krishna. Today we are continuing our reading now of the 20th chapter of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we are continuing on now from the descriptions of the wonderful pastimes of the defeat of Hiranyaksha. And we are introduced to them by the question which Shonaka Rishi has asked in text 1, right? And what is he saying? O Sutta Goswami, after the earth was again situated in its orbit, what did Swayambhuva Manu do to show the path of liberation to persons who were to take birth later on? We are hearing this here because, of course, we know there are multiple features which define a Purana, right? Who can tell me which one's the first one? Or which is one of them? One of the features which defines. We hear that there's a list, right? Puranas are not just an arbitrary list. They're not just a random list. There's a criteria that defines the genre. What defines a Purana? Okay, one of them begins with sa and rhymes with arga, right? So you have sarga, right? We have this primary creation, right? And this is, of course, there's one famous atheistic scientist, right? He is famous for popularizing so-called science, right? And he will say, you cannot create an apple pie from scratch without first creating a universe, right? So we can say when there is an apple pie, there is the baker who has baked it, but then there's also the person who has made the very universe that could be made in. And therefore we have that. We also have visarga, right? And this is, of course, then the other creation. Another feature is, of course, details about the manus, right? So naturally, this information is going to be inquired, right? In order for us to, in turn, receive this knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam, we must hit all of the features, right? Of course, we're very excited to reach the Samambonam feature, right? In the 10th canto. But first, we should understand all of these other things as well. And so naturally, this is being asked. We have heard these wonderful pastimes. And sometimes people can find these pastimes a little bit unbelievable, right? How can the earth planet be submerged, right? be submerged away, right? How can we believe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is appearing from somebody's nose, right? But of course, naturally we can think, whose nose is the Supreme Personality of Godhead not present in, right? The Supreme Personality of Godhead is present everywhere, right? And if he wishes to appear from one specific nose, then that is up to his volition, right? So all of these pastimes, they're very transcendental, right? And they're a manifestation of the Lord's ability to do whatsoever he pleases, right? Srila Prabhupada was once speaking to one individual who had received a Krishna book, right? And so Srila Prabhupada, naturally, he was asking, well, what did you think of this book? You've read this book, what do you think of it? And the person said, oh, it was a very interesting book. It was a little bit fantastical, though, right? Fantastical in the sense of a little bit hard to believe, right? How can I believe there is a boy lifting up a mountain, right? He is killing all these large demons, right? How many trillions of gods, right, Ugrasena had, right? All of these details, a little fantastical. And Srila Prabhupada, he very nicely, very sweetly said, you are fantastical to think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot do whatever he pleases, right? So we hear these wonderful, wonderful pastimes, and they remind us of the infinite capacity of the Supreme Lord to establish and manifest his pastimes in whichsoever way he pleases. So we've heard this, right? And now we are continuing this description. However, before delving deeper into this, we now go on to a tangent of the question. And we hear about an inquiry regarding Vidura. We know Vidura is a very, very great personality, right? Vidura is very, very elevated. And so naturally, we are hearing questions about him. And what are those questions? We are hearing about how Vidura abandoned the sinful company, right, of his brother. And not only his brother, but his elder brother. We will find this is a recurring theme in the Mahabharata pastimes, if we will, right? We have these conceptions of dharma, right? The correct things to do, right? What is the right thing to do? What is the wrong thing to do, right? And whenever the Supreme Personality of Godhead gets involved, these things turn upside down, inside out, right? How does Srimad Bhagavatam define the fulfillment of all Varnasrama principles? Samsiddhir Hari Toshanam, right? They are perfected fully in pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore we find this, right? Vidura, in order to maintain a correct and appropriate atmosphere, he leaves, even going against general principles, to respect one's elder brother, right? We find this all around the world. One should respect one's elder brother, right? I don't know of any culture where they say, your elder brother, you should be a little disrespectful to him, teach him a few lessons about the world, right? No. The elder brother is somebody who is held in a high level of esteem. And yet what do we find here? Vidura, he has gone against this principle in order to fulfill the higher principle of staying in an atmosphere where it is Krishna conscious, right? We can find an even greater example in Arjuna. Forget about disrespect. He's being expected to kill his relatives, right? He's being expected to kill his gurus. Why? Under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore we find, this is the principle of bhakti, right? We find that some religious principles, they are higher than regular economic principles or regular ethical principles. But even higher than religious principles, right? Srila Prabhupada, he says, are spiritual principles, which are the direct command of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that which allows the bhakti lata bij to flourish. And so it is very important for us too to find association among sadhus, to find an atmosphere which is conducive to Krishna consciousness, right? And of course, where can we find such an atmosphere? This world today is not a very appropriate one to find such an atmosphere, right? If you walk down the street, actually practically, I was thinking about this. I was recently in Port Macquarie, back in my hometown, and my high school reunion was happening, and so my mother, she said, no, you have to go, say hello to all of your teachers, tell them how you're going, etc., right? So I went there. And as I was there, I was really thinking, as I was hearing about all of the activities that were happening, right? All my high school friends, they were filling me in on all of the, it's not exactly Sankirtan that they're going on in their night times, right? And they're filling me in on all of these details. And I was thinking, including myself these days, in those days, you would be running away from a Dhritarashtra. These days, you would be lucky in your entire year to run into one person in the general public who was as qualified as Dhritarashtra, right? So I was thinking this, right? Dhritarashtra, we could actually beg for a ruler like Dhritarashtra in these days with the condition that society is in, right? So this world is not a world that is favorable to the association of devotees, nor is it favorable to cultivate Krishna consciousness. And therefore, we are left in a very peculiar situation. Where do we go? What do we do, right? It's very difficult. Of course, they say that Australia is an increasingly secular country, right? Australia is an increasingly irreligious country. This is what they say. So what general pundits will say, right? The general sort of commentators on Australian issues. And according to our most recent census, this is the case. So many people have listed themselves as being atheistic. But actually, as some of you know, I'm in my final year of final semester now, hopefully, by Krishna's mercy, of my religious studies degree, right? And so I'm finding out what the real internal set of analysts are saying, right, about Australian society in regards to religion. And I can just say, if anyone's thinking of doing a religious studies degree, don't worry about it. At the end of the 3 years, you'll find out that all of it is Tarko Pratishta, right? It's all this person is debating this person's debating that person. At the end, we say, okay, neither of us know, right? So anyways, but what I found very interesting is my professor, who's a very, very leading expert in Australian religion in particular. He was saying that actually Australia is deeply religious, right? But the way that religion is constructed is very, very different, right? Because now atheism is an assumed assumption in the world, right? The average person will say, what will they say? They will say, give me evidence that there is God. They'll never ask you, give me evidence that there isn't a God, right? Because the assumed assumption is that I will assume there is no God, and you have to prove that it is the case any otherwise, right? So in this way, the average person, he is acting, right? So because atheism is the basic assumption, today we have a thing called Australian civil religion. America has its own one, American civil religion. And what is that religion? The flag is sacred, right? If anyone says anything bad about a flag, people will get very, very upset, right? The flag is the murti of this religion, right? People will say, if you say anything bad about the Constitution, especially in America, you'll see, they'll walk around with American constitutions, right? That is their Shastra, right? They're very deeply worshipping all of these things, right? If anyone says anything bad about the nation, right? About the name of the nation, right? Not the people, but just the very concept of the nation. Oh, then they've committed Mahaparad, right? This is the Sangha of this religion, right? So we can find like this. There is a deep set of religiosity in this world, right? But what is that religiosity centered around? Economic development, right? Pride for the nation, all of these concepts. What are these concepts, right? Idolatry is the word that's often used in the Abrahamic religions, right? And we can do very well to borrow that word in this case, because what is idolatry? It is worshipping that which is not God as if it is God. And that is what modern society is doing. So we are in a situation where this world is not a very tolerable place in order for us to cultivate our Krishna consciousness. Nor is it a very tolerable place for the devotees to be treated well, right? We can see that. Charitamrata Prabhu is a great book distributor, Acharya, now I'm hearing. And he can share, I'm sure, lots of wonderful pastimes, right? Of the different abuses you face when you're out on book distribution. I wouldn't repeat half of the things I've been called while out on book distribution. It would be an offense to the Vyasa-san. But some very colorful things. I still remember a few times I was impressed. I was thinking, wow, this individual has very great intelligence. He has managed to put every single insult in the English language in one sentence while speaking to me, right? So we see like this, right? Not a very favorable place, right? Srila Prabhupada very sweetly says, this world is not a place for a gentleman, right? So what do we do then? This is an issue. Of course, I think the solution is rather obvious, is it not? What is the solution? Where is the place we can get sadhu sangha? This is the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, right? He has manifested this international society for Krishna consciousness for that very purpose, right? What is ISKCON, right? Is ISKCON a legal entity, right? Is it a legal entity that we have manifested so we can sue people who use our logo, right? Is this what ISKCON is? Is ISKCON some arbitrary line? You are a member, you are not a member, right? Is it some thing where you have a membership card? If you can pull out your membership card with your photo, now I am an ISKCON member. Is it? No, Prabhu is shaking his head. He is correct. What is ISKCON? ISKCON is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And what does this mean? We should think. What does it mean? It is a society. Society means together, in community, alongside each other. But what is it a community for? Sometimes people, they will be in ISKCON, right? The International Society for Society Consciousness, right? We are all together here to promote ISKCON. No. When we are in ISKCON, we are all here together to promote Krishna consciousness because we are in ISKCON, right? So what does it mean? It means a society where together we are speaking about Krishna. We are relishing Krishna. I remember, actually I don't think many of you will know, Hamsa Sangha Prabhu. He used to be in the ashram here a few years ago. And every day when I would see him, he would always ask me one question. And this question actually would remind me of when Krishna, he is fighting in Kamsa's arena, right? We all know when Krishna is fighting in Kamsa's arena so beautifully, right? The whole crowd is seeing, and they're all seeing different things, right? Some are seeing death personified, right? Others are seeing their relative. Others are seeing like the greatest of fighters, like this, right? They're all seeing based on their bhava or lack of bhava, right? They're all seeing a certain thing. But what happens after they're seeing Krishna? All of them, they begin to speak, right? And they speak all sorts of details. And they'll say, did you hear? Krishna, he killed this demon. Balaram, he killed this demon, right? They're saying, wow, these two brothers, they are heart and soul, right? Srimad Bhagavatam describes how they drink in their glories through their eyes, right? Through their ears. So, like this they're speaking, but there's an interesting detail to be noted. Because we find that actually the details they say are wrong. Some people in the crowd say that Krishna killed a demon that Balaram killed. Others say that Balaram killed a demon that Krishna killed. Oh, this is very confusing. Why are they doing this? Can we think? Why would they be doing this? It's a little bit complex. My spiritual master, he says that actually this is the case because everyone there was gossiping about Krishna. When Krishna was not there, all they would do is they would speak about, oh, did you hear Krishna, he did this? Oh, did you hear that Krishna did that? And we all know, with the not-so-sweet gossip that goes around, stories they go and they change the details and before you know it, all sorts of things have come up, right? So in the same way, this was in Krishna's pastimes, right? They were all gossiping about Krishna so much that they would share the details and the details would get mixed up. They would get confused. As he would pass around, they would say, oh, he killed this demon, he killed that demon. What great sadhana is it? And there ISKCON is present, right? Because what are they doing? Well, maybe it wasn't international. We can say it was ISKCON, right? So there it was present. Why? Because they are there and they're constantly gossiping about Krishna. So Hamsa Sangha Prabhu, what he would do is every day he would come up to me, whenever he would see me, and he would say, Prabhu, what color was Srimati Radharani's dress this morning? This would be how he would speak to me, right? He would be gossiping, right? He would be saying, how sweet were the deities dressed this morning? And every time I would say, if I would say, I don't know, he would say, oh Prabhu, what are you doing in darshan? What are you thinking about in darshan then? So like this is ISKCON. I very much, it really stuck with me. I thought this is an international society for Krishna consciousness, right? Here is Prabhu, right? And what is he doing? He is speaking to me about Srimati Radharani, about Radha Gopinath. How are they dressed today? So this is a wonderful part of sadhana. To this day, I will try and remember, just in case he's around the corner somewhere, right? I will try to remember at least what the color of Srimati Radharani's dress is each morning. So, like this is the purpose of ISKCON, right? Srila Prabhupada has given this wonderful opportunity, right, for us to associate with the devotees relishing these things, right? And so Madhavananda Prabhu, he sometimes says, and he speaks about this, he speaks about the heart and art of Vaishnava Sangha, right? And if we don't master this art, then we can throw away the rest of our spiritual life. Jiva Goswami, in his Laghu Bhagavatamrita, he quotes the Padma Purana. And he says, anyone who worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but does not also worship Vidura, Shiva, the other Vaishnavas, then his worship is pointless. So we must master this art of Vaishnav Sangha, right? So he speaks about it. And he says often, because we know Madhavananda Prabhu is a very, very senior devotee, a very advanced devotee, right? Very scholarly, very sweet, right? And he says often devotees ask him, Prabhu, when I joined Krishna consciousness, I was so fired up. Everything was so exciting, right? Everything was so wonderful. Everything was just amazing. I was so inspired in my Krishna consciousness. I was chanting 238 rounds a day. I was doing Nirjala Ekadashi every single day the whole year. I was so inspired. I read Srimad Bhagavatam every day with purports, right? This is what I did. So inspired I was in my Krishna consciousness. And nowadays, 16 rounds is a chore. I'm sitting down, Hare Krishna, thinking whatever, right? Like this, my snick, Ram Rams, right? I'm doing like this, so boring, right? I've lost the taste. Before I used to have darshan of the beautiful deity form of the Lord, and I think, how beautiful is Krishna? And now I think, I hope the prasadam has been cooked nicely, right? This is what has happened. What has happened to my Krishna consciousness? Madhavananda Prabhu, he would say, I don't want to be critical, right? And I won't be critical, right? But I'll say something that I've often noticed in other people. I won't say this is the case with you, but this is often the case with many people. Before, when you used to come to the temple, you used to see all these people running around and you used to think, wow, look at all of these wonderful devotees engaged in the service of Krishna. Then after a while you get to know them and this Prabhu, sometimes he says a swear word every once in a while. This Prabhu, I saw him at the cinema hall a few weeks ago. Oh, this Prabhu, I was walking around and I saw he was eating a sandwich and I don't think it was prasad, I think he was eating bhoga. And suddenly you see all of these things and you think, oh, okay, the real devotees, they're the ones in saffron and everyone else, they're these bogus rascals who don't deserve my association, not my elevated association. I'm a senior devotee. I've been practicing Krishna consciousness for 2 weeks, right? That's how, right? Sometimes this trap will come up. We become so familiar with the devotees, right? And therefore, are we in ISKCON anymore? No. Then we have excommunicated ourselves from ISKCON, right? It doesn't matter if you have the membership card. It doesn't matter if you're turning up to the temple. It doesn't matter if you're standing here or not, right? You are no longer in ISKCON. Because you are no longer engaging in that society of relishing Krishna Katha. You are relishing fault-finding Katha, right? You are not relishing the association of the devotees. You are relishing the association of yourself. And on our own, we will never be able to succeed, right? So, like this can often be the case. And this is why often we'll find, right? We'll think all of these basic things, they no longer appeal to me. One of my favorite things ever is whenever there's a new devotee and they're reading Srimad Bhagavatam for the first time. I always will ask them more than anyone else, besides the very, very senior devotees, the person I will most often ask are the people who are first reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Please share with me what you've read. Please share with me your realizations. Just one devotee I'm preaching to, right? He's just going through Bhagavatam for the first time. And I'm enjoying it so much, right? Why? Because what will they share with you? Or once he'll always send me a photo of a different page, right? And he'll say, wow, he's reading 3rd chapter, right, of 1st canto. And he says, wow, Krishna has so many incarnations. I thought he only had 10, right? He was saying like this. And we think, once you're reading through your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, however many times of Srimad Bhagavatam, you think, yeah, I know that, right? You can feel like that. You become desensitized. But actually, how amazing is it? Krishna has a sankhya, uncountable incarnations. How beautiful is that? How wonderful is that, right? So when devotees first read through Srimad Bhagavatam, they are in many ways more elevated than most of the devotees who are reading Srimad Bhagavatam the 3rd time, right? Because they are noticing and relishing these so-called simple details, these so-called simple pieces of knowledge, right? But they are not simple. They are so relishable, right? And therefore you hear the very senior devotees His Holiness Devamrita Swami once was saying, he let it slip, he's on his 45th, 46th or something read-through of Caitanya Charitamrata, right? And so His Holiness Devamrita Maharaj, he was saying, even with this many times of readings, right? Even with this many times of reading, still I feel like it is the first time reading it, right? And yet, so many times we can fall into the trap. This is my third time reading it. Oh, same thing. I want something new. I've read Prabhupada's books. Now I will read the Sandarbhas, right? We will think like that, right? But actually, this is not the case, right? Then we have fallen into this trap. We have forgotten how much of a nectar those so-called basics are. How many times did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hear every morning from Gadadhar Pandit the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj, the pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj? Did he say, oh, this is below me, right? No, these are very relishable things. And so like this, the taste can go away, not because Krishna consciousness has become less tasteful, but because we are no longer willing to taste it. We are no longer seeking to taste the glories of the devotees around us. We are no longer willing to taste the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam, of Srila Prabhupada's books. And because of that, sometimes there can be this feeling of inertia. Oh, this is all same old, right? Not same old. So like this, we can find, this is what ISKCON means. To truly be an ISKCON member, we must be in a society that is Krishna conscious. I remember when I was in Mayapur, I was there at the celebration of the disappearance day of His Holiness Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami. And one of his disciples was there. This disciple was his personal servant for his Antya Leela, for the final pastimes that he had manifested the last few months. And this devotee was speaking about the whole process, right? He was speaking about how in the final months, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami, he would always be telling him, this servant, he would always be telling him, I am really relishing the association of my God brothers. These days, my main focus is I wish to associate with them more and more and more, right? Going deeper and deeper into this mood of what ISKCON truly means, right? Going deeper and deeper. This was his meditation. All the time he would be reflecting, I wish to have the association of this devotee. I wish to have the association of this one of my God brothers, right? When staying in my flat, there was one devotee, Neminath Prabhu, and he was sharing with me some nectar from His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. Radhanath Maharaj was saying, firstly, my first responsibility in life is to serve my God brothers. My second responsibility is to serve their disciples. And my third responsibility is to serve you, my disciples. This is the attitude, right? So anyway, so Tamal Krishna Goswami, as we know, then concluded his earthly pastimes, right? And so this servant, he was there in the process of the samadhi being constructed, right? And so he was there as they were carrying the transcendental body of Tamal Krishna Goswami in order to place it into samadhi. And during that time, Tamal Krishna Goswami, his eyes were open. His eyes were fully open. A mundane person would say rigor mortis or something. Would be, the devotees are transcendental. They're not under any such sort of considerations, right? And so like this, his eyes were open the whole time as his transcendental body was being carried. And as they were lowering it into the samadhi pit, right? I'm sure we all know, right? They place into the ground and then they pour the salt, right? So this whole time, and so this devotee, he was there, and he was right at the bottom as they were placing Maharaj's body there. And as he was placing it, right, he felt so bad because he knew they were going to pour the salt, and he didn't want the salt to be poured on the open eyes, right, of Tamal Krishna Goswami. And at the end, he tried one last thing. He took one of the flowers that was on the garland, and he used it to close the eyes. And at that final moment, Maharaj's eyes, they closed. And after this, he was very moved by this, but he did not understand, right? Because at the end, they were closed, right? So there was some willingness there. So afterwards, he was really reflecting on this. And he was reflecting on this in the association of His Holiness Srila Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. And Jayapataka Maharaj, he was saying, you're saying that he was reflecting, right, on how much he loves his God brothers. He must have kept his eyes open to have darshan of his God brothers one final time before being placed into samadhi. So this is the intensity of the love for the Vaishnavas that is held. Of course, that is the intensity of love held for the Vaishnavas in the perfection of devotion, right? But still, this is what we should aspire to. This is the fulfillment, right? Therefore we can say, the epitome, right, the fulfillment of what it means to be an ISKCON member is to have such a strong desire to associate with the Vaishnavas. So strong was Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami's desire, right? That he kept his eyes open right until that final moment. Because obviously all his godbrothers were there. Such a significant personality. They all wished themselves to have his final darshan, and he also wished to have theirs. So this is the position, right? This is the position of the devotees, and this is the necessity, right, of keeping proper dealings with the Vaishnavas, with the proper dealings with the devotees. And therefore, we must always avoid aparadhs. And we hear this so often, but we should always continue to hear it, right? Vaishnav Ninda is the mad elephant offense. It'll destroy everything else, right? If we won't have any spiritual life without sadhu sangha, we definitely won't have any spiritual life with Vaishnav aparadh, right? So this is the nature of it. But not only that, sometimes people, they hear how insanely impactful Vaishnava aparadh is, and it is so insanely impactful. And they hear it is 10,000 times worse than any regular aparadh, right? And therefore, sometimes you'll hear people articulate some sort of idea, okay, it's fine if I offend the non-devotees. As long as I don't offend the devotees, it's all fine, right? But actually, I wouldn't want to take 1/10,000th of a Vaishnava aparadh on my head, right? Even if Vaishnava aparadh is 1,000,000 times worse than offending a so-called regular person, right? Even if it's 1,000,000 times worse, I wouldn't want to take 1/1,000,000th of a Vaishnava aparadh on my head. And that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he writes on Vaishnav Ninda, he lists there are 4 people that we shouldn't be offensive towards. And he lists them in order of who are the most important not to be offensive towards. The number 1 is, well, obviously, Vaishnavas, right? So they are the ones we must, number 1, never offend. Then 2, dharmic people who are fully in the mode of goodness and who are potentially on the verge of becoming Vaishnavas, right? So people who are not yet Vaishnavas, or people, but are nearly there, or people who are in the mode of goodness, right? True Brahmins, right? People who are truly in the Brahminical culture, right? People like Vidura, right? Of course, Vidura is also a Vaishnav, right? But Vidura is very nicely showing that even though he is apparently of a Shudra birth, he is having all those Brahminical qualities, right? So naturally, it is actually who has those qualities. This is the third, right? The second, sorry, I'm going the other way around. This is the second highest one. Then we have generally dharmic people, right? They are the third, right? So again, it is not as severe, but still we should go through all lengths not to offend them, right? And so therefore we should not offend these individuals either. People who are dharmic to some degree, but maybe they're not fully in the mode of goodness, right? They also should not be offended. Then Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he lists the final group. Their offenses against them are also not so severe, but still we should avoid them. That final group is everyone else, right? So like this, this is the list, the rankings of people. Of course, just because the Vaishnav is to be the most respected and because Vaishnava aparadh is the most severe, doesn't mean that therefore it's, free game, right? I won't get angry at the Vaishnavas, but I'll get angry at all the non-Vaishnavas. This is not the case, right? In fact, it's listed as one of the anarthas, Jiva Himsa. Jiva Himsa is listed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur elsewhere as one of the other great anarthas, which will hold back our spiritual progress. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he gives a very nice definition of Jiva Himsa. He says, of course, Himsa, violence to the jivas, it can be anything, right? It can be punching someone, it can be slapping someone, it can be calling them bad names, etc., etc. But the highest Jiva Himsa is to not preach Krishna consciousness. This is the greatest violence against the spirit souls, right? So actually, in order to most avoid violence and aparadh against everyone, we should be constantly engaged in the preaching of Krishna consciousness. Because it is the greatest violence to have the opportunity to provide Krishna consciousness to someone and then to say, actually, no, this will make me uncomfortable. I will feel a little bit uncomfortable doing this. Oh, I could be doing this. Oh, but that will make me shy, right? No. This is what great violence, right? We can think. I think Haridas Thakur was a little bit uncomfortable when he was getting beaten in the streets, right? If he can undergo that, then we should take some inspiration, right? And of course, as I said before, Charan Prabhu is a wonderful incarnation of this preaching. So, like this. We are finding. This is the This is the severity of Vaishnava aparadha and any aparadha in general, right? So therefore, we should think that a Krishna-conscious society, again, a society not like the one Vidura is running away from, right? That one is a safe place not only for Vaishnavas, but for everyone else as well. And this is an essential point. Srila Prabhupada, he would say, our farms, our Varnashram farms, if we establish them properly, people will be running to join them because they will see what a sort of Kali Yuga mess this world is in, and they'll wish to run there for shelter, right? Even non-devotees, they will be there on the farms, on the periphery, because they'll wish to take shelter. And of course, naturally, there'll be a wonderful opportunity to bring them to Krishna consciousness as well, right? So, like this we find. But then, if the case is that aparad, right? That aparad is so bad, sometimes we'll see devotees are very conscious, right? Avoid aparads, right? And this is true. Please do not take away my message right now with saying don't avoid aparads. But this is the lowest question we can ask. The lowest thing we can ask is, am I doing any aparads, right? It's a good question to ask. But actually our formulation should not be, are we avoiding aparad? Our formulation should be, are we seeking the association of the devotees? Are we serving the devotees? It is not enough to think I'm not offending the devotees. What we should be thinking is, are we serving the devotees? In Caitanya Charitamrata we hear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, before he is cleaning the Gundicha Marjan, right? The Gundicha Mandir, right? Before he is cleaning that mandir, what is he coming to do? To ask for that service, right? The word that's used, Srila Prabhupada, he translated as beg, right? Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu begs to clean the mandir, right? If such a thing is good enough for us, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead to beg for, then what should we be doing, right? In order to attain it. I know I do this sometimes, right? It's the end of the Sunday feast. I see the devotees are coming out to ask for help, and I think, I have to go home now, right? Sometimes we can have that temptation, but we should push past it. We should always remember, right? Mahaprabhu begged for such an opportunity, right? How much more we should do, right, in order to have this. His Holiness Janananda Goswami, he was saying that in the early days, I still remember, years ago I heard this class, and he was saying that in the early days, everyone would go to bed, they would wake up at 4 a.m., everyone would chant their rounds in front of the deities, then they would all go out, everyone on Sankirtan, everyone out on book distribution, everyone would come back. Like this, the temple would run. There would be no concept of sleeping in or anything. The only concept that would be there would be going to bed late. And everyone would compete for that opportunity. Because the person who went to bed late, they were the ones who had the honor of washing the pots. And that's how they would all be in the early days. Of course I heard that. I got a little bit scared. But in a good way. I thought, how lazy I am, Here they are. And he said, happily. They were so happy that I have received the mercy of being able to wash the pots today. I have received the mercy that I can give some of my time to the mission of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? So again, the question is not so much, are we offending the devotees? Hopefully we're not, right? And we should always be thinking, have I been offensive to the devotees, right? But more so, we should always be thinking, have I been able to serve the devotees? Have I been able to give in service for them? Because in this way, we will find, again, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is present, right? Because Krishna consciousness is present in Vaishnava Seva, right? So this is the esteemed value, right? This is the esteemed value of Krishna consciousness. And the esteemed value of the devotee. Actually, the devotee is the height, bhakti, the bhakta, is the height of our philosophy. Often we find this to be the case, right? Sri Chaitanya Charitamrata, right? Sri Chaitanya Charitamrata is what? It is the height of our philosophy, right? Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is the complete peak, right? Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is the completion of all of our philosophy. It is the highest of all conclusions. Srila Prabhupada, he was very eager to translate it, to give it. Actually, if you look at the history of Chaitanya Charitamrita was written at a time when the Vaishnava community was having deep tensions. The Bengali wing of the Vaishnavas, they were very much into Mahaprabhu Bhakti, right? Singing Bengali bhajans, right? And so we had these wonderful philosophy arising there. The Vrindavan community was very Sanskritized, right? All about Radha Krishna pastimes. Obviously, both were holding Mahaprabhu and Radha Krishna in esteem, but these emphases had resulted in that they started thinking, are we even the same sampradaya, right? We are both having these two distinct moods, right? And so like this, there was some divergence. And so Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, part of the reason why he was commissioned to write Caitanya Charitamrata was to mend this. That's why you will find Caitanya Charitamrata in Bengali, but filled with the writings of the Goswamis, filled with these Sanskrit references, in order to show that these two communities are one. And by doing so, what did Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur do? He unified the entire Gauriya community again. When somebody wants to know, well, what do Gauriya Vaishnavas believe? Now they could say, you read Caitanya Charitamrata and you will find out. This is the final word. This is the cohesive, because not only is he bringing together the Bengali and the Sanskrit wings, he is also unifying the Sanskrit wing, quoting from all of the Goswamis, all of the Acharyas before him, right? Like this he is doing, and he has created Caitanya Charitamrata. So Caitanya Charitamrata is this height of our philosophy, right? And what is the heart of Caitanya Charitamrata? What is the heart of Caitanya Charitamrata? The heart of Caitanya Charitamrata is exploring a very essential question, right? And this question, this problem, is one thing that it makes me very happy, because it's the one thing that I can say I have in common with Krishna. Krishna, he is so beautiful, so wonderful. He has so many wonderful opulences, and I'm, of course, a tiny, tiny little spirit spark, right? And the lowest of all of them, right? But there is one thing that I can say I have in common with Krishna, which Cyrus Prabhu doesn't have, which Chiran Prabhu doesn't have, and they don't have this, right? So in this way, I'm more similar to Krishna than they are, right? And what is this one thing? Krishna is not a devotee, right? This is the one thing that I can say I have in common with him, right? This is the heart of the Caitanya Charitamrata, right? Krishna, he is upset, I'm not a devotee, right? This is the one glory. And so we have this whole pastimes acting out in order to resolve this thing. How amazing are the Vaishnavas, that the height of our philosophy is centered around the issue of Krishna needing to become a devotee, right? How elevated are the Vaishnavas, right? Therefore, sometimes people, they wonder, right? They have this question, right? How does Caitanya Charitamrita end? What is the conclusion of Caitanya Charitamrita? Does anyone know? The final chapter is the Shikshashtakam, right? People expect it to be Mahaprabhu ending his earthly pastimes, right? People expect it to be that, right? I know some other biographies written of Mahaprabhu, they do end like that. They have these descriptions, how Mahaprabhu, he has concluded his earthly pastimes, he has left, he has gone away, right? But this is not the way the Caitanya Charitamrita ends. Caitanya Charitamrita ends with the Shikshashtakam. Now this can seem a little bit confusing, right? This can seem a little bit counterintuitive, especially because sometimes we will try to project, right? We have our conceptions of how pastimes are, right? We project the material pastimes we see around us, right? And we project them onto the Supreme Lord, right? We think there's janma, there's karma, and then eventually there's the conclusion of the karmas. And this is the way that everyone's lives here are patterned, right, in the material world. But of course, this is not the case for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor for his pure devotees. I was reading this wonderful book by Mula Prakriti Mataji. She's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And this book is called Our Srila Prabhupada, A Friend to All. And what she did is, Mataji, she went around and she interviewed all of the sadhus, all of the Vaishnavas who knew Srila Prabhupada before he sailed to the West to start ISKCON. And so she was recording it was like the memories of Srila Prabhupada, but not done by Prabhupada disciples, done by the sadhus who had been around Prabhupada, who had been living with him in the Radha Damodar temple, like this. She compiled very wonderfully. And I still remember one of them. It really stuck out to me. I forgot the sadhu's name. But he made the point. He said, do not think, because he was speaking about the Radha Damodar pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. And he said, do not think that these pastimes are over. Still, Srila Prabhupada, he is here, and he is planning to preach. And still, he is preaching. The pastimes of the devotee are eternal. They do not erode away, right? They are eternal pastimes, and that nectar is still here. So when you come here to Radha Damodar temple, do not be brash. Be very cognizant of the weight of where you are entering, right? So many sadhus before him, but also Srila Prabhupada. Their pastimes are eternal. Their presence here is eternal. So like this, he said. Why? Because these pastimes are, again, outside of the influence of material time. Material time destroys, but spiritual time, it builds, right? The pastimes of the Lord are all equally eternal, right? And therefore, to say there is a beginning, middle, and end is not so logical, right? Because all of the Lord's pastimes are eternal. They are always happening. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, once he was there with some of his disciples, and they were doing kirtan, Sankirtan, and they were out in Mayapur, right? And they were all singing and dancing, right? And then at one point, they saw there was a dead dog on the side of the street, and all of them, they became a little less enthusiastic. And they closed their noses like this. They were, smelling the dead dog like that. And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he became very grave. And he looked at all of them, and he said, none of you can see that Mahaprabhu is here dancing. Right? All you can see is this dead dog. This is what Srila Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada said. All you can see is this dead dog here. You do not know that Mahaprabhu is here dancing. We are in Mayapur. He is dancing here. Right? So the pastimes of the Lord, they're perpetually eternal. They're all complete. Eternally, all the pastimes are happening. Right? And of course, it's very hard to wrap our heads around, right? But that's why the Lord is a Dhokshaja, right? He is very, very much beyond our grasp. So then, we find Caitanya Charitamrata. Why does it not end where we think it ends, right? It ends in Shikshashtakam, right? It's not ending when we're hearing the conclusion of the Supreme Lord's pastimes. It's not ending in this way. It's ending with something else. The reason why the Caitanya Charitamrata ends with the Shikshashtakam is because the Shikshashtakam is where we find this conclusion, right? If we can say the Caitanya Charitamrita is the conclusion, well, we can say Srimad Bhagavatam is the conclusion of all Vedic literature, right? We can say Caitanya Charitamrita is the conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Because the questions that arose in Srimad Bhagavatam, the part where Krishna realizes I have the problem that I'm not the devotee, this arises in Srimad Bhagavatam. So naturally then Caitanya Charitamrita, it's a conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam becomes complete. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada again, he says, we cannot understand Bhagavatam without Caitanya Charitamrita, we cannot understand Caitanya Charitamrita without Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So at the very least, you're all forced to read both twice, right? Right? Because you need to understand them in light of each other. He says that actually, Caitanya Charitamrita is the frame in which Bhagavatam is positioned in, right? So like this, he says. So if we can say then we can say the final chapter is what? The final chapter is the conclusion of the conclusion of the conclusion, right? We can go on and on and on. And I'm sure we could extend that link of conclusions longer if we wish to, right? So this Caitanya Charitamrita is the conclusion. And so we conclude on which point? We conclude on the Shikshashtakam. And we can ask then, what does the Shikshashtakam conclude on, right? It concludes on a very specific point. Krishna's Kaviraj Thakur, he says, that actually Mahaprabhu, he is reciting all of these lines. And he's saying about how, he's saying all of these things, Tranadapi, Sunichina, Tarorapi, Saishnana, right? We're hearing all of these different features of the Shikshashtakam, different elements of how we enter into the holy name, Chaito Darpanam Marajanam, right? We're hearing about the cleansing of the heart, right? But the final text, this one is very simple. What is Mahaprabhu saying? He's saying, whatever you wish to do with me, right? Do however you will, right? I'm your eternal servitor, right? So in this way, Mahaprabhu, he's concluding the Shikshashtakam. And concluding it in this way, Krishna's Kaviraj Thakur, he makes one point. And he says at this point, Mahaprabhu, what is he saying? He's saying, Krishna, I am your servant, right? And Krishna's Kaviraj Thakur, he says at this point, he is speaking the words entirely of Srimati Radharani. What is the point there? The point there is that at this point, what is he saying? Krishna himself is praying to Krishna, I am your servant. At this point, he is praying this. And at this point, he has completely forgotten that, and he has completely entered into the identity of being a devotee, right? At the very conclusion of Caitanya Charitamrata is the point where, up until then, people are telling Mahaprabhu, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's closing his ears and he's running away, right? He's saying, Ami manusho ashrame shonashi, right? I am a man, I am in the ashram of a sannyasi, right? That is all I am. I often find it funny, right? Because at the time, we know it was culture. If you saw sannyasi, you'd say Narayan, Narayan, right? Because there'd be the idea, a sannyasi, a Mayavadi sannyasi, he is Narayan himself, right? And of course, when Mahaprabhu would hear that, he would reject it, he would become angry. And it's a great humor that the only sannyasi in India at the time who would reject being called Narayan is the one who is Narayan himself. So we find like this, right? This is the nature of Mahaprabhu's pastimes. But at this point, all of this is gone. And finally, he is saying, now I am a devotee. And Kaviraj Thakur says, at this point, he has fully become a devotee. At this point, he has fully entered into that mood of being a devotee. And therefore, we conclude Caitanya Charitamrata on this point. The conclusion has been reached. Krishna has tasted the nectar of what it is to be a pure devotee. Krishna has entered into that, and he has tasted that fully. Right? So we can say the conclusion of the conclusion of the conclusion of the conclusion is what? Is that to be a Vaishnava is such an elevated thing, is such an exalted thing, is the thing to be so much longed after. This is the highest conclusion of all the Vedic literature. And so then again, I come back to the point, right? Vidura, he has left this place. I mean, if we understand, or if we, I don't understand, but if we begin to understand the glories of the Vaishnavas, then how obvious does it become that, as Srila Prabhupada has written here, Vidura showed by example that anywhere that Krishna is not honored is a place unfit for human habitation. A devotee may be tolerant regarding his own interests, but he should not be tolerant when there is misbehavior toward the Lord or the Lord's devotee, right? How obvious that is, right? When we understand that, or at least, as I said, when we begin to understand the high position of the Vaishnava, right? We should flee. I mean, forget about fleeing a place where the devotees are being offended. We should flee the place where the devotees are not being served, where the devotees are not being honored, right? This is the nature. So, in this way, we should understand this. And we should also understand, as I said, that in today's society, there is no place that is honoring the devotees. There is no place that is properly honoring the Supreme Lord or the devotees. So the only way that we can allow this service to the devotees and the service to the Lord to continue is by the preaching and growth of ISKCON under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada. Because it is only there that we can create this atmosphere where people will be properly sheltered in order to grow in this very, very high transcendental truth. Okay, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.